Hi there, poodling around us. How are we doing today? Well, my guest today is one of the employees at Langley Castle Hotel in the English county of Northumberland. Langley Castle is probably the most authentic, fortified medieval castle hotel in England, brimming with features that have existed for centuries, some even as old as the castle itself, which is 675 years old this year, having been built in 1350. The Baron and Baroness of Langley, Dr. Stewart and Dr. Marianne Madnick, are certainly very proud of the castle's history and they love to share it. That's why Eilidh Wise is not just an employee, but a passionate guide of what are known as the Langley Castle Battlement Tours. These take guests and non-residents alike around the castle, pointing out all the not-to-be-missed features of the historic building. So, have I whetted your appetite? Let's find out more by talking to Eilidh. Right, well, I'm really delighted to have you join us today, Eilidh. So, first of all, I suppose we should start by telling people when Langley Castle was built and who it was that decided to build it and what do we know about him.
So, Langley Castle itself was commissioned to be built by Sir Thomas de Lucy. Sir Thomas was a favourite knight of Edward III, and around that time, in the early 1300s, King David II of Scotland was asked to attack England by his French allies, and he marched south with 12,000 Scottish soldiers and laid waste to most of Northumberland in the process. And during this, he and his forces attacked and partially destroyed Langley Manor House, which was one of Sir Thomas's homes. Now, King David II of Scotland was captured at the Battle of Neville's Cross, which Sir Thomas took part in. So he got a bit of personal revenge there.
Mm.
And in 1350, he started to rebuild Langley. But this time he decided to do it in a castle form. Technically, the castle itself is actually a rectangular medieval fortified house because it hasn't got a central courtyard. But its name is Langley Castle.
So it was a more resilient house for him to live in a very dangerous part of the country by the sound of it.
It was indeed. This area in the past has had quite a turbulent history. And before Langley was rebuilt, Sir Thomas's first wife, Margaret, died, and he remarried the king's cousin, Agnes. So rebuilding Langley in a far grander scale also could have reflected the fact he had technically married into royalty.
Yes, and didn't want us slumming it in some little tiny house somewhere.
Goodness no.
This is a real castle, isn't it? You know, it's medieval, it's very authentic, it's got battlements on the top, which is why you're able to organise a daily Battlements tour, isn't it? So, at what time of day can people take that tour? Is it every day? And what does it cost? And do you need to be staying at the castle as a resident?
So we run the castle tour daily at 10:15. It's available to anyone staying here. We also do walk-ins. It is free for all guests, and it takes around about 45 to 50 minutes, depending on how long the tour guide talks for. Mine tend to be longer because I'm a bit of a chatter. And as it starts in the drawing room, and we make our way through the castle, heading slowly up till we reach the very top.
And what's the first thing that you point out as you're departing on this tour?
So my tours, I always start with King David II.
Mm.
And inside the castle itself, we talk about the drawing room, which is one of our main socialising areas in the castle, where we do all of our afternoon teas and relaxed dining. And in the 1300s, it was also a socialising area, as it was where people used to mingle. And they would talk and eat and drink in there. And we talk about how the walls are so thick. And we move our way through towards the spiral staircase.
Ah, right. Because they're about 7 foot thick, aren't they, the walls? They're quite incredible, aren't they?
They
Mm.
are very thick. Holds the heat, which is good when a castle of this size does require quite a bit of heating.
Yes, indeed. And so you've gone onto the spiral staircase. But there's a very grand staircase in the castle, isn't there? But I think the one you're referring to is a windy one, isn't it? That would have been part of the original defences originally, wasn't it? So
Yes.
can you tell us about that staircase and how it helped defend the castle?
Yeah, so originally the castle had one main staircase. It was done primarily for defense reasons, as it's a lot harder to invade when you've only got one little staircase to wind your way up. And it goes in the traditional clockwise direction that most historians believe was done on purpose, as knights were primarily taught to fight right handed. And if you're standing on the step above and you're trying to swing to chop off an invader's head, it's a lot easier if you're not hitting the middle stair column. They had to think about those things back then.
It sounds horrific, doesn't it? But yes, yeah, somebody was very clever to think of that.
And on each level, as you go up, there's an alcove, which was a little guard room. And there would have been at least one guard stationed on each level as you went up. And each level would have had a grand entrance into each living part of the castle.
Oh, right. I don't think I've ever been up that staircase, so I wouldn't have a clue about the alcoves. But yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Now, en route, as you're going around the castle, there are also some medieval toilets. Can you tell us about those? How many are there? Where are they in the castle? And what do they look like?
So here at Langley, we are very proud of our toilets, as they are some of the best preserved medieval ones you find in the UK. The guardrobes themselves, there's 4 on each level, and originally there would have been a simple vent with a hole in it. The stuff would have dropped down through a long tunnel, and then it would have either been removed via a stream or manually and the use of wheelbarrows, which would not have been much fun for whoever got that job. As they go up, the guardrobes go further and further back in the wall. This is done simply so that those below do not receive gifts from those above. They were often lined with herbs and flowers, which was the medieval equivalent of air freshener, and there weren't any doors, so it was a communal affair.
I, I read somewhere that they got the name because people would hang their clothing in there because the ammonia killed off fleas and things that were in the clothing. Is that correct?
Yes, so roughly translated, guardrobe means wardrobe or small space, and people did used to hang robes in there with the strong ammonia smell to help kill off lice, other little bugs, as they were, even with the herbs and flowers, quite strong smelling. And they were classed as a luxury in a building, but they were a strategic disadvantage because in a fortified building, they were a direct link to the outside.
Mm.
And as the history books show, in quite a few buildings, invasions were carried out by lucky people climbing up through them.
Ugh.
And in the past, there have been royalty, including an ancient king of Poland, killed by things being sent up the guardrobes. In
Oh,
his case, a spear.
doesn't sound good.
Wouldn't have been pleasant at all.
Oh, indeed. So, yes, because I mean, I think now that you've said that about that being a line of attack, I think Langley actually doesn't have foundations for that reason, does it? It's built on solid rock because that was to prevent people getting under the castle and into the castle as well.
Yes, so they took every possible chance to reinforce the building and to keep people out. So the castle doesn't have normal foundations and were built on these massive boulders to
Mm.
make it so people cannot just dig their way in and underneath. Sadly, we don't have dungeons. It would be wonderful if we did. And as I always say, I have told my children we have dungeons. I won't be telling them otherwise. But it does give us a nice solid foundation.
Yeah, which was all important given the warring nature of the land it was in. Now, once people arrive at the top of the castle on the tour, what can they see on the landscape whilst they're enjoying the view?
So on a good day, which thankfully we do have some, you can see for miles from the top of the castle. You can see all the way down the South Tyne Valley. You can see Hadrian's Wall. And to the west, you do have Sycamore's Gap, although sadly now not quite as distinctive as it used to be.
Mm.
And you can see the surrounding woodlands and fields, including obviously many of the farms around here used to be part of the original estate. Unfortunately, sometimes we do get days you can't see past the walls, but that's part of the fun of the Northumbrian weather.
And just to explain to people about Sycamore Gap, if they don't know, there was a very iconic tree there, wasn't there? Which featured in the Kevin Costner movie, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and was just a marvellous tree on the landscape, wasn't it? And then somebody decided to go and chop it down. So,
Yes, that was a very sad day for all of us here
indeed.
in Northumberland, especially those of us who grew up with that tree. And where I live, which is actually just up the hill from here, we could see it from our kitchen window. And I
Mm.
remember coming down that morning, looking over, and it was gone. And I'm not going to lie, a few tears were shed.
Yes, I think a lot of people cried that day because it's just irreplaceable, isn't it? So yes, that was a terrible thing. But just to explain that to people who might not know, that's what happened. Now, there's something unusual to do while you're on the battlements, isn't there? Can you tell us about the feature that's up there and what people on the tour do when they actually enter into that little building up there?
So, in one of our turrets, we have a special room. It is the Cadwallader Memorial Room and is an old chapel. So, Cadwallader Bates, who restored the castle, um, died, unfortunately, fairly young at the age of 49 and left a widow, Josephine. Now, Josephine wanted somewhere private where she could come and pray, and she decided to have her personal chapel up in the turret. But Josephine wasn't a lady who did things by half. So, in the early 1900s, after Cadwallader died, she travelled on her own to Rome, and she had a private audience with Pope Leo XIII. And she got personal permission off him to have her chapel consecrated. And up in the chapel, on a tablet on the wall, written in Latin, is essentially an instruction manual for the chapel.
Oh, really?
Yes, we have on it, I have translated it roughly. I can't say I'm fluent in Latin, but a mixture of Google and other things have helped. And essentially, summed up, it was for Josephine's sole use, so it wasn't for a wider congregation. She was only allowed one mass a day, unless there was a special reason, possibly like Christmas. And we do believe the consecrations died with Josephine, so it's no longer classed as holy ground. But it has got some beautiful stained glass. We do have seats up there as well. As part of our tour, our guests sit in there and we have our historic video.
And that video actually gives a really good impression of all this warring nature of the land that we've been talking about, doesn't it? It's quite a dramatic thing from what I recall that really casts you back into those days when the enemy was just on the horizons all the time. I think it really brings it to life, doesn't it?
It's a fantastic video. It's got some marvelous reenactors in it, with some beautiful horses. I don't know where they got those horses from, but they're delightful. The gentleman who narrates it is a very keen historian and certainly is very passionate. And it does show a lot of the history of the area and how it ties into the castle, going all the way back to the Roman times, which is when the first border between England and Scotland really was defined by the construction of Hadrian's Wall.
Mm. And you've mentioned horses there. So did Thomas de Lucy have horses at his castle? And if so, do we know where they were kept?
Yes, so basing on other buildings we know that the de Lucy family owned, we can have a good idea of what men were stationed here. And the likelihood is Sir Thomas had a small light infantry unit here, but a much larger light cavalry unit. Now, the ground floor of the castle was used for livestock. It wasn't a living area, but that was most likely more your sheep, pigs, and cattle. It's more likely we had simpler buildings around the castle itself, stables, barracks, and servants' quarters, and that's where they would have been stationed. In a castle like this, it was usually a marshal who was in charge of the fighting men and the horses. And he would have also had clerks, blacksmiths, and you also would have had squires who would have helped look after them as well.
So it was really kind of a community around it, wasn't it? It wasn't just a castle with a family living in it. It was kind of a whole infrastructure of itself by the sound of it.
Oh, yes, there would have been quite a lot in this area. Sadly, we don't have the evidence of them now today, at least not that we've found. And I don't think the gardener yet is quite thrilled at the idea of me going around digging up the lawn looking for them. But we likely had quite a few buildings, one of them being possibly the castle's kitchens. As for buildings like this, the kitchens weren't usually inside the main walls. They were often built outside in simple structures, as kitchens can have a habit of having accidents.
Mm.
So it's one of the reasons they put them outside. And usually these buildings were a lot simpler, as they knew if the castle was attacked, they were going to get destroyed. So they didn't want to waste time, manpower, materials, and money on anything fancy.
Mm. So were the servants living inside the castle at all, or were they all outside of the castle?
You may have had some inside the castle, especially the higher up ones. You did have a steward who was essentially a building manager who made sure wages were paid and there were supplies and there was no debt. But he actually lived often out of the castle as he was quite a prominent figure. But there were chambermaids, and the family itself also had a private chaplain most of the time, who was also responsible for the education of the noble children. So they likely stayed in the castle and they often travelled with the family if they moved between their properties.
Because as we said, this was the king's cousin, so presumably there had to be some sort of, infrastructure and a number of servants looking after her interests, because she would have been, I guess, quite an important person.
Yes, so the noble women of the time, they were in charge of chambermaids, often the decor of the castle, choosing maybe what was served food-wise. It was generally the steward who was in charge of more the clerical and the admin and money side, but the lady of the castle had more of a control over the castle's appearance. And she had her chambermaids who would have helped look after her. They also would have had laundry maids, and the lord of the chapel also would have had a chamberlain who looked after him, and he made sure that the lord was properly dressed and even helped put him to bed at night.
Mm, well, could all do with somebody like that, couldn't we? Now, Thomas de Lucy was officially the Baron of Langley, wasn't he? But he wasn't the first Baron because before the castle was built, somebody else had that title. And the first one that we know about was a man called Adam de Tyndale, wasn't it? Succeeded by his son, not very conveniently, also called Adam. So as fate would have it, something happened that brought some of Adam de Tyndale, well, one of the Adam de Tyndale's possession to Langley Castle, didn't it? Can you tell us what happened a couple of years ago and what people can now see in the castle?
So in 2022, there was a metal detector who was searching on a riverbank. It was a riverbank slash field in South Tyneside. And he discovered something, which I believe he first thought of was an old coin, but it turned out it was a medieval seal. Now, these seals were like a family signature. What you had was often a letter was sealed with a blob of hot wax, or at the bottom of a letter, you had a blob of hot wax, and this seal was pressed into it. Now, this seal, we don't know if it's the first Adam de Tyndale or the second. Again, it's not helpful them both being called Adam. On the seal itself is a picture of two people. One is a man, possibly with a mustache, and there's also a veiled lady. And from what we know, including the writing around it, it was the seal of the de Tyndales, one of the Adams. And it was found, and Dr. Madnick, who is our current owner and our current Baron, he is very keen on the history. And when he learnt about this, he purchased the seal and brought it back to Langley. And it is currently on display with some of its information in our foyer.
So, yes, that's really interesting, isn't it? So people can actually see that piece of history, which, as you say, it was found quite away from the castle, wasn't it? It's not just round the corner where this man found it. So I think at the time I remember reading that, he'd probably been out hunting somewhere and been roving around that area, and just dropped the seal somehow. But yes, it's great, isn't it, to have that sort of piece of heritage back in the castle. But talking of seals and things like that, this was a time of coat of arms, wasn't it? Did the de Lucys have a coat of arms? And if so, what was on that coat of arms?
So yes, like most noble families, they did have a coat of arms. The de Lucy coat of arms is three pikes facing upwards on a bed of red. Now, this coat of arms, the reason they use pike is another name for pike is Lucy. So they use the pike, which is also quite a fierce fish and got quite a reputation.
Mm.
Now, unfortunately, the de Lucy line did end with Sir Thomas's daughter Maud, as she didn't have any surviving biological children. But Maud was a clever lady, and when she married into the Percy family, which I might mention later on, she stipulated that when she named her stepson, Hotspur Percy, as her heir, the de Lucy coat of arms must be added to the Percys. And that has continued to today. The modern coat of arms for the Percy family includes the three pikes of the de Lucy line, which did, as I say, unfortunately die with Maud.
And to put it into context, the Percys were really quite important people of their time, weren't they, as well as the de Lucys? And Hotspur is actually mentioned in Shakespeare, isn't he, in one of the Shakespeare plays? So this was an important family that she married into, wasn't it?
It was probably the family of the North. So Maud married first Earl of Northumberland, and they are still today a very prominent family in Northumberland. And yes, they are mentioned in the Shakespearean play Henry IV, which follows their conflict with Henry, as they did help him come to power, but they then claimed he didn't pay them enough and therefore turned against him, which resulted in them clashing with the king, which then led to Hotspur, yes, unfortunately, was, let's just say his head adorned a spike outside of York. And the castle, which was then owned by the Percys in 1405, was attacked either by the king's forces or local raiders using the conflict to their advantage. And the castle in 1405 was gutted by fire. And it is then when the castle itself became a ruin.
Yes, and that sounds really tragic at the time, doesn't it? Because it lost its roof, like you say, it was just a shell of a building. But in actual fact, that probably helped it become the castle that we know today, didn't it? Because it meant that people weren't living in it and renovating it over all the centuries that it was empty. And that's why it's such an authentic castle today, isn't it?
Yes, so if the castle had been lived in, as buildings are, it probably would have been altered. So there may have been extensions, they may have knocked bits down and changed it. But because it was gutted by the fire in 1405 and everything inside it was destroyed, but the walls themselves actually survived and really did so in a really good condition and most of them intact. And because of that, and it was then left, there was no alteration. So it was almost like sealed in time until 1882, when it was purchased by Cadwallader Bates, who, being a very keen historian himself, wanted to restore it back to its former glory, which is why he and his wife Josephine only altered a few things, more to make it structurally sound and a little more easier to live in, like adding the new grand staircase, as they did acknowledge one spiral staircase was maybe a little inconvenient for modern day living for them. But yes, that's why this is one of the best examples of a medieval tower house that's inhabited you do find anywhere in the UK.
Mm. Now, despite not living in the castle, the barons continued to come along, didn't they? And there were some very notable later barons of Langley that followed the de Lucys and became owners of Langley Castle. And I'm really referencing, I suppose, two that we can pick out here. The Radcliffe brothers, sometimes called the Ratcliffe brothers, James and Charles. Now, they were also really important, weren't they? Because they were cousins to the exiled Stuarts and were very much tied up with the Jacobite campaign to reinstate the Stuart monarchy to the UK. But it didn't end well for them, did it? Can you tell us what they did and what happened to the pair of them?
Yes, as I generally say, unfortunately, the word unfortunately can be applied to many of the owners of the castle. But James and Charles were the sons of the Earl of Derwentwater and his wife, Mary Tudor, who was a recognised illegitimate child of Charles II. And yes, they were cousins to the Stuart line. James, when he was a child, was sent abroad and was a companion to his younger cousin. And when they did become adults, James was a more peaceful, loving man, but he felt honour bound to join the Jacobean cause. And they did cause quite a bit of trouble. They helped with organising the two armies that were in the north. So the two armies that were organised in 1715 were in Northumberland and Scotland, and they were essentially distractions. So the original plan was for these armies to cause noise and trouble up north, to give the Stuart heir a chance to land in the south and raise an army to attack the south and London, which failed. That didn't stop them though. They carried on and caused a lot more trouble, but were both captured at Preston, where they were taken to London. And James, who had become the more famous of the two, at the ripe old age of 26, unfortunately had his head chopped off.
Hmm.
His body, which was displayed, was stolen and brought up north, and it was later rested in Durham. And rather famously, when his body arrived at the city, the Northern Lights spread across the sky, which sealed his reputation as a martyr for the Jacobean cause. And some people believe that his heart was cut out and removed before he was buried and taken to France, where it was then placed in a chapel wall, which was sometimes done with Jacobean leaders as a sign of honour and allegiance to the Jacobite cause. His brother Charles, his younger brother, was not executed at the same time and managed to escape the Tower of London, which is impressive as it was generally considered to be impossible. I believe there was a plot that may have involved a door being left open during a party. And he fled across to the continent and he started his family and he joined the court of his cousin and became a right-hand man to his younger cousin, Bonnie Prince Charlie. And over the next 30 years, he did keep coming back to the UK, trying to raise more support and awareness for the Jacobean cause. But when the next rebellion was planned, he was sailing with his son back to the UK and was captured. And this time, when he was taken to London, they thought it was probably best not to waste time with him and immediately chopped his head off.
So no leaving the door open that time.
No leaving the door this time. He was already proven to be a bit of a slippery customer.
Mm.
And it is believed his body is buried down south, but his heart was then removed and brought up north to be laid to rest with that of his brother in Durham. So there is a body and a heart that don't match there. And the Radcliffes, while in the end a Stuart was not placed back on the throne and they did not succeed in their task, they were revered and became very famous. And they are part of a famous Jacobean poem that was written only a few years after James's death, but is still actually being sung today. And it does include the verse that when the head that wears the crown shall be laid low like mine, some honest hearts may then lament for the Radcliffe's fallen line. And we also have a monument on the side of the road as you come up to the castle. That was put there by Cadwallader, and we believe it's one of only two monuments south of the border in support of the Jacobean cause. And with it on it, it essentially reads, for James and Charles, who sacrificed themselves for their lawful sovereign. So
Mm.
while they didn't succeed, they did make themselves famous.
Yes. It's a very sad tale, isn't it? Because, well, there is a bit of gossip around this in a way, isn't there? Because I believe that James didn't really particularly want to go and raise the army and was forced to do so by his wife. who basically said, "You better get out there and start marching." So, yes, a bit of woman power, I think, was behind some of this as well, wasn't it? Because, like you say, he was quite a peaceful, loving person, wasn't he? I think his brother was a bit more of a hothead, but he was, quite laid back, I think. And I think she forced him out into action, didn't she?
That
But
is a popular story, that
yeah,
is. Well, it's not, believed by some historians, but it's one that does make you sort of it's quite a fun one, which,
yeah.
people do like a good fun one. Whether it's true or not, it's still quite a fun one to tell.
And, good on her, because I have seen that she did actually go to George the First and try to appeal for his life, didn't she? So, yeah, she did her bit in the end to try and save him, but it wasn't to be. But
No.
never mind. Yes. And there is a bench as well, isn't there, at Langley? In the grounds, there's a bench that the Jacobean Society donated. And I think they do like to come and celebrate at Langley, don't they? They bring the bagpipes and they have a little, I think, annual kind of outing to Langley to celebrate the Radcliffes and their place in history, I think.
Yes, they come. They often read a few tributes to the Radcliffes. They have a Northumbrian piper playing inside our drawing room, which is far nicer inside than a bagpipe, as they can be quite loud. And the Northumbrian pipe is a bit more indoor friendly. Um, but they do, and they have their meal here. And they also, a couple of them walk down to the monument and they place a wreath. And
Mm.
that's pretty much every year as well. And they did donate a bench, which is now sitting on our main lawn, which is a lovely view for anyone to sit next to. And it's also placed next to our stocks, which is for our guests to have some photos in, or if they feel the need to lock anyone up, I suppose you could if you want to. Um, but yes, that was donated by them, and we do welcome them every year, and it's a nice tribute to have, and a nice strong link to our past as well.
Yeah. And for any American listeners who don't know, the stocks were kind of a medieval form of punishment, weren't they? So if people were going to be punished, they'd be put in public and they put their hands and their feet through holes that were all kind of chained up then. And they had to sit there and often have things thrown at them, didn't they?
They did, yes, and thankfully, they don't tend to use them for that purpose now, other than we use it for photos, and they tend to be nice to us staff. We don't get punished by being put in them, so that's quite good as
Well,
well.
a plus to everything, isn't there? Now, talking about punishment though, as the Radcliffes had been such naughty boys, Crown, or the king at the time, wasn't too happy, was he? And he decided that he was going to confiscate a lot of their possessions, which led to another period of history for Langley Castle, didn't it?
It did, yes. So, due to the Radcliffes annoying the royalty at the time, Langley Castle and its title was confiscated from the Radcliffes. The title was removed, and then the estate itself, which, while the castle was a ruin, was still quite wealthy with a range of farms, mills, and mines attached to it, was handed actually over to the Royal Navy Hospital at Greenwich, which was interested in the rental income and also the productions from the mines. And they held on to it for quite a long time. But the title itself was only returned in the modern times.
And it was returned by the current owner of Langley, Dr. Stuart Madnick, wasn't it? That is why he is now the Baron of Langley, because he brought that title back to reunite it with the building, the actual physical building and the castle, didn't he?
He did, yes. So Dr. Madnick purchased the castle in 1985, and he, in 2007, bought the barony back off the crown. So while he is not technically classed as Baron Madnick, he is Dr. Madnick, the Baron of Langley. And he has now officially reinstated the title back with the castle.
And that's quite something, isn't it? Because he is actually an American person, isn't he? He's not a British person. So that's quite an unusual thing, I would have thought, in Britain to have that an American who's the Baron of a castle.
Yes, it's he does live, I believe, primarily now in Florida, but he is very hands-on with the castle. And that's really what he likes to focus on, as well as obviously making this a lovely place for people to stay.
I suppose then a period of change came with the World Wars, didn't it? So what happened to the castle during the two World Wars?
So Josephine lived here alone until 1932. And then during the World Wars, the castle was used as an army base. Now, sadly, at the moment, we don't have any official records that give us information on that. We're currently actually researching that. Um, but we do know this, especially through local people who strongly remember it being used for military purposes. There was a strong POW population around here, which again could have been linked to this. So that's prisoners of war. Um, so it was used then. And then in around the 50s, it was converted into a girls' boarding school. And it was St Cuthbert's School for Girls. So a slight change in their use there.
Mm.
And we do actually have some old students who still visit us. We have a lady who I believe will be turning 90 soon. She will be coming and talking to us about it soon. And we've had a few of the old students come back and told us how they remember running through the corridors. And I believe one once told us that they used to rollerblade on the roof, which I'm pretty sure health and safety these days would certainly not allow.
It's incredible, isn't it? Yes. I mean, just to paint the picture of people, this roof is pretty high.
Yes.
Now, Cadwallader and Josephine, they were using it as a home, and then we had the war period with these people moving in. But it was only 1986 that it actually became a hotel and became open to other people to stay in. This was down to Dr. Madnick, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. So, from what I believe, Dr. Madnick was on holiday when a friend of his told him that there was a castle for sale and maybe he should go look at it. And Dr. Madnick ended up buying Langley Castle. And then he converted the castle, renovated it, and opened it in 1986 as a luxury hotel, bringing it back to the public and allowing the public to enjoy it again.
Yes, and I don't know how many hundreds of people will have been through there now, but it certainly brings a lot of interest and a lot of attention from people, doesn't it? Because I think the minute you walk through the door of Langley Castle, you kind of fall in love with it, don't you? It's quite an incredible building.
It is beautiful. It really is. And it's being styled in a manner that is very sympathetic to its age, while still also being comfortable and quite luxurious for our guests. And it has, I mean, even without knowing the history, you can feel that the building has big past behind it. And we do get people who just keep coming back, including our um, one of our more popular guests, Molly, who comes every week and has done for 35 years.
Mm.
And she's 92 and she comes every week on her Thursdays. And we also get people who come every year or every few months. They have their same rooms, their same tables, and we love meeting them and chatting with them. The hotel isn't the largest, but with that, we are able to provide quite an intimate and warm setting. And we like to think of ourselves as hosts rather than simply staff providing a bed for people. We like to give people a place to feel comfortable and have a nice experience here.
And that experience is for people from all around the world, literally, isn't it? You have all nationalities coming to Langley Castle.
Oh yes, we've had all sorts. I mean, personally, I've had people from Portugal, from Brazil, Australia. We get a lot of Australians during their summertime or winter. I think they come for a little bit of a relief from the heat. Obviously, we get a lot of Americans who do love a castle. They don't really have as many over there, so I think they come to make use of them here. But we get so many different people. And that's part of the fun. We get to meet so many different people, hear lots of different stories. And then we also have the locals who we had a gentleman recently who was 102 and he came and had a lovely cup of coffee, and we sat and had a good chat with him. He served in Africa during the World Wars. So we have people from near and far who visit and bring an awful lot of stories to us here.
And not just visit, because you have people who fly in from far-flung places around the world to actually get married at Langley Castle as well, don't you?
Oh, yes, we have a lot of weddings here, and we have a wide variety of weddings here, starting with the very smallest, which is our two-person wedding, where it's just the bride and groom, and staff act as your witnesses. I myself have had the pleasure of being a witness for a couple of weddings now. We have renewal ceremonies, which myself again, I was able to officiate one, as it's not technically a legal ceremony. And then we have very, very big weddings where people have the entire castle to themselves. We had a Indian wedding last summer, which was involving marquees and dancing, fireworks. It was a fantastic couple of days. And then we have some unusual weddings, such as last year we had a Viking themed wedding, which involved around 20 reenactors charging the wedding party using Viking battle cries and weapons across the car park. And then after the ceremony, there was axe throwing and archery on the lawn. So there's never, shall we say, a dull moment here at the castle. You never know what might happen. And we like to cater for people, so we tend to offer a basic package, and then you can flourish it with all your own bits and bobs to make it truly your own day.
You know what I think it is? I think it's because the castle is just such an amazing backdrop, isn't it? It can be what you want it to be. And I think that's why people's imaginations run wild, because it is just such an incredible building, isn't it? And you can put it in sort of different contexts and different historical periods according to what your interest is, whether that's Game of Thrones or whether it's Dungeons and Dragons. You can turn it into something absolutely fantastic if you've got a bit of creativity about you as well.
Yes, I mean, we can do fantasy, we can also do modern if we have our modern pavilion, where I'm actually currently sitting right now. So if you wanted a modern, we've got the fancy restaurant, which you can have luxury and fancy. We can do fantasy. We've got an outdoor arena, so if you want to be brave and risk planning a British outdoor wedding, you can do that. So you can have pretty much any style, and we will try our best to accommodate. I believe we've had owls involved in the past and all sorts, because I think we do acknowledge that, some people have a set idea of what a wedding is, but reality it's about two individual people coming together. And if you don't make it about them, then it's not their day. So we
Mm.
try and make it about them. And we are just happy to make it as either simple or as bizarre, as fancy or as plain as what people like, whatever it is that's going to make them happy. And we regularly get our couples come back who say, "Oh, I got married here, then I got married here." I think one couple came back a month later. And, uh, and what's quite nice is we're also getting the next generations.
Mm.
So we have couples coming back going, "These are now our kids." So, we like to think, "Oh, Langley kids," in a way, because their marriage here resulted in these kids in the future. So it's rather nice to see how the generations carry on and how Langley takes part in their future lives.
Indeed, yes. Now, when you're leading a battlement tour, what is it that people are most interested in of all the things you tell them in the castle's history?
Well, what I quite like is the fact that I get such a variety of people on my tours that it does change. I must admit, one of my favourite parts of the tour, and one that I seem to get the strongest reactions from, is to do with one of Sir Thomas's children. And Sir Thomas had three children, but his, we believe, middle son caused drama in 1981, which many of our guests find a bit surprising that has such a strong modern link. But in 1981, there is a church called St. Bees in Cumbria. And in 81, a group of university students carried out a series of digs there. And they found what they expected, which was lots of skeletons and old buildings. But they found the skeleton of a woman. But what they didn't expect to find was next to her was a wooden coffin containing a sealed lead casket. And when they opened up this casket, they found the body of a man wrapped in linen and pine sap. And when they unwrapped him, they found he was actually in a condition where he could have died last week, when in fact he was over 400 years old. And it turns out he's actually one of the best preserved mummies ever discovered in the UK. And he was in such good condition, they were able to take him to Carlisle Hospital and perform an autopsy. And to give you an idea, he still had his eyes, he still had all of his skin, hair, and nails. He had red blood in his veins, and many of his internal organs were still actually pink.
Wow.
And as I say, I am someone who finds that kind of history quite fascinating.
Mm.
And anyone else who is a bit like me, who finds the slightly gruesome sides of history quite appealing, you can actually watch the video of that autopsy online.
All right.
All you have to do is type in The Mystery of the St. Bees Man, which is a documentary that was called that because at the time they couldn't figure out who he was. But over the last few decades, they have continued to research his identity. And most now are quite happy and confident to say they did discover it, especially when they found letters written by knights on a religious crusade in Lithuania, who identify the body as Sir Anthony, son of Sir Thomas de Lucy, who was killed on that religious crusade and then brought back to the UK to be laid to rest at St. Bees. And that strong link to quite a fascinating and strange incident is something that the guests do find quite fascinating.
Right.
And yes, it is a bit gruesome, but sometimes the best parts of history are.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite chilling in a way, isn't it? Now, if someone stays inside the castle, how does that kind of link to all the drama that we've been hearing about? And what do the names of the rooms actually tell us about all of this dramatic history that we've been hearing about? But
So all of our rooms, obviously they have their numbers, but they also have names, and they're all linked to strong figures and elements of the castle's history. The rooms inside the castle are all very luxurious. They've got four-poster beds. We also have some saunas and sunken baths. And the decor is all within the castle designed around being medieval, while also being very comfortable. You've got many window seats where people can relax. We do find some people come and literally spend their full day that they stay with us just sitting in their rooms. They just relax. They do work, they do reading, and they just find the rooms very comfortable. We have televisions, obviously, if you want to watch some telly. We do have Wi-Fi, so it's not totally ancient here. And then we also have the castle view rooms. They're a bit more modern, but again, very luxurious, and they all have their ensuite. Some have balconies. And we now also have our Toll Bar cottage, which is our self-catering cottage with 2 bedrooms, but you can come and eat at the castle if you wish, if you don't want to have to cook your own meals. But it does give you a bit more separation from the castle if you just want a bit more sort of private alone time as well.
And thinking about children, because I guess you get quite a lot of kids on this tour, there is now a publication, isn't there, for kids, which is called Hairy History, and it brings all of this vibrant history to life in a sort of kid-like form, in the sort of style of horrible histories, doesn't it?
Yes, well, you can tell I'm a generation of horrible histories, the horrible side of history being the appealing type. But yes, we do get quite a few kids. We have that document. And obviously, when the kids are here, we love to engage them. I always like to ask them if they've found a dragon or if they've found the princess sleeping up in the tower. And you do find the kids absolutely love it. They love running around in the drawing room. I mean, yes, we are quite a luxury sort of place, but we love it when the kids have fun here. We have the stocks if any parents want to threaten to put their kids in them. We have some Harry Potter stuff that they can dress up in, as J.K. Rowling did come and stay with us while she was writing the books. And of course, we do have the castle grounds, so it's a good place to go and run and play. And the kids do love especially the bits where people's heads are chopped off. That does tend to be a favourite part of the kids. And they like to ask about ghosts, of course, as well. because a building like this, you're always going to get people asking about the ghosts.
Uh, and do you have schools that come and visit you? And do they do tours?
We are open to schools to come and visit. I believe we're going to be possibly talking to the local schools, as I have children of my own in the local schools who are actually doing castles at the moment. And they tell their classmates and teachers about their mummy's castle. It's not quite my castle, but I'm happy for them to think that. And we would love to see more kids here. So if any schools do want to get in contact, we would love for them to come. We do have groups who come here for meetings, and then they have mini tours, private tours. We have a lot of car clubs that arrive and come to the castle, and I've done quite a few personal tours with them. And we take them up to the battlements. As we only have people up on the battlements when they're escorted by staff, health and safety these days. So we take people up there. But yes, we would love more kids to turn up. We have a special Easter event for children, including, I believe, an Easter egg hunt. So there might be a Easter bunny or two. I've been hopping around the grounds.
Oh, well, that sounds interesting. Um, but, the other thing, I suppose, is that if you're really into history, there's also Hadrian's Wall, isn't there? Just a really short drive away. So it's not just a case of exploring medieval history. You can actually transfer a few miles and explore Roman history on one of the most renowned Roman structures in the world.
Yes, the castle itself is a base for you to explore the wider area. We're not a spa hotel. We're somewhere people can stay and relax, and then you can explore outwards. You do have Hadrian's Wall with Housted's Roman fort. You've got Vindolanda as well. You also have Hexham, where you've got the medieval jail, the oldest purpose jail in England. You've got the Abbey, which its crypt is the last part of the building that survives from when the Vikings attacked. You've also got several mining centres in the area. You've got Allendale with its sci-fi museum if you want something completely different. So you've got all sorts around here that you can explore. It isn't just if you're interested in your medieval history. We've got tons of walks. We are a base for people to go fishing, shooting. And of course, because we're based pretty much bang in the middle of the country, it's not that difficult to commute to either Newcastle or Carlisle. So you can visit the east and the west from here as well, fairly easily, as we have a very good train link as well.
And there is the Tully House Museum in Carlisle has quite a lot of Roman heritage as well, doesn't it? So there's quite a lot to see there if you do go to Carlisle. So, yeah, lots to do, I think, if you're a history buff, and lots to see and enjoy and take in. But you don't have to, what I find is you don't have to be really into history to just enjoy what Langley Castle has got to offer. It's just such an incredible place, isn't it? That it just kind of draws you into it. And, whatever your interest in history, there's something that will attract you almost like a magnet, I think, when you get there. So finally, and I'm not sure how long you've been doing the tour, but what do you get out of it? What really gives you the buzz about giving that Battlements tour every day or however many days a week you do it?
So I'm quite a history fiend. I love a bit of history. I actually used to work for English Heritage on the Roman Wall. So I moved forward in time to medieval times. And I just love being able to get people to understand that we're not just a fancy hotel building, that there is an awful lot to it. And it's got such a strong link to this area. This area itself, I mean, Northumberland has always had the term attached to it of called the Middle Kingdom, where often the people in this area see of themselves almost as a separate identity rather than being linked to England. And we have a very strong link to the Scottish area. And we're sort of our own sort of community around here, the Northerners. And it's nice for people to understand that history, as a lot of people don't always think that there's much more to this area than Hadrian's Wall or the party life in Newcastle and Newcastle United and all that. There's a lot more to this area. And telling people about the history and telling them things that they obviously were completely unaware of, it's lovely to be able to pass that on. And my own personal motto is to know the past, live in the present, and look to the future. And I love helping people know about their past. And a lot of people, even if they're from across the planet, it's surprising how many find that they have roots here. And you have people who come here and go, well, actually, I know that my great, great, great grandparent was from round here. And you can help them discover things about themselves through the history that we have here.
Mm. It sounds like it's really rewarding what you're doing and that you really enjoy it, I can tell that. So, yeah, um, what would you say to anybody who's just sort of passing by? Would you say drop in, give it a go, do this battlement tour?
Oh, yes. I mean, anyone who's passing by, I mean, if you just need to refuel, we do a wonderful afternoon tea, or we just do a couple of scones. We have a rather nice coffee, and or as the Baron of Langley always has, a hot chocolate. That is his preferred beverage. And you don't have to stay with us. You can just drop by. You don't even have to have a drink if you don't want. You can come in and have a good, as us Northerners call it, a good nebby around, and have a look in all the nooks and crannies in the castle, and just enjoy it. And we are a bit of a hidden gem, and we do have a lot of peace and quiet around here. If especially if people are travelling from the east to the west, or vice versa, we're just a nice place to sort of stop and recharge. We get that a lot. So please, anyone, come and visit us, and the staff are usually very, very friendly, and love having a good chat with people who come through, whether we tell you stories or you tell us. Either way, we love it.
But if they want to do the tour, it's 10:15 in the morning, isn't it? Yeah.
10:15 in the morning, every morning we do the tour, and everyone is welcome to join us.
That's great. Thank you very, very much, Ailey. That's been a fantastic whiz through the history of Langley Castle and really giving us this impression of what the tour can bring to us and why it's well worth doing. So thank you very, very much for your time.
You're very welcome.
Can't really describe to you how wonderful Langley Castle is. So I hope that Ailey there has helped give you some impression of what that might be. It just has a mesmeric effect the minute you first spot it. So on that basis, I would say a battlement tour really is a bucket list experience and that you should seize the day and put it in your diary. I've always loved talking about the castle in the PR that we've done for it here, and through the downloads that I've written, which have included some about the history as well. So I'm sure that you would find it equally fascinating and amazing. So do try to do that and put a battlement tour on your schedule, either in 2025 or in a year in the future. And you never know, you might find me poodling around there pretending to be a princess if you do make a visit. So there we go, guys. That's a wrap for this episode. So until the next time, take really good care of yourself, whether you are motoring around Monmouth, enjoying some mountain living in Montana, or mooching around Malibu. And do remember, as I always tell you, that life is much more fun when you are poodling around.